Okay, that's a call on the frontline index, and you've got quite a few top contributors, particularly in the form of Infosys, which has snapped its two-day fall. Currently, the stock is at the day's high, clearly aiding the Nifty right now. But let's move right on and focus in on the budget. What is the expectation when it comes to fiscal consolidation, the eye on borrowing target as well, and get in a management perspective? We've got Ashok Haldia, who is the Managing Director and CEO, PTC Financial Services. Thanks for being with us, Mr. Haldia. Now, you have a fairly high exposure to the renewable energy space. Any specific expectations from the budget for solar, wind power, thermal and hydropower?
The government has given a great impetus to development of the renewable power in the country. The last 1.5 years have seen the fiscal, the regulatory and the legal changes to facilitate that growth. We would expect that regime, that impetus to continue. Particularly when you see this year, the expansion in the solar capacity is likely to be 140%, and therefore this would require large investment. Another area is that so far the emphasis has been on the solar power generation, that is a utility project. And 2-3 years ago, there was a lot of apprehensions on the viability and the viability of such solar plants. But we now need to graduate from the solar power generations to the decentralized generation and to the rooftop. So I would expect that this budget would give impetus both in terms of the fiscal and non-fiscal measures to the rooftop solar power as well as the decentralized generations. Another area that I would expect the budget to give focus is on the hydropower, the push for the hydropower in terms of its policy and in terms of fiscal incentive, and also the availability of the funds for the longer tenure and at the concessional terms to the hydropower projects.
Sure.
The fresh capacity as well as the capacities which is already in the implementation and not moving forward for a long.
Mr. Haldia, now NPA stress has risen in this space. So what are the key announcements that you would be watching out for that may help this sector?
One thing is that the UDI scheme has been very positive. So one would expect that the government continued thrust on the implementation of the UDI scheme together with the different state governments. If that happens, the viability of the DISCOMs would improve, and from that, the NPAs or the stranded assets in the power sector would reduce. I would also expect that there should be some funding mechanism available for stress assets, last mile funding options as well as financing for the overruns into the stranded projects is very important. Another significant aspect is that we need to look at the regulatory framework for dealing with the stranded or the NPAs. One would see that these projects are allowed longer tenure by the RBI. There is 5/25 also made applicable for the smaller power projects, and the similar kind of the action so that the lenders find it easier to deal with the NPAs. For example, the SDR, it's a very good scheme. It empowers the lender to effectively deal with the NPA assets. But what really happens is that within 18 months of the SDR, you need to find a new investors. Now that's not practical, that's not feasible. So I would suggest that the regulatory framework for dealing with the NPA assets would also undergo a change.
Now,
and another thing is the bankruptcy code. Bankruptcy code is very important because you should be able to deal with the stress assets, you should be able to fund, you should be able to take over and transfer the management of the stress assets to the new investors effectively and well in time.
Mr. Haldia, before we let you go, just take us through how business is shaping up, what kind of competition that you're seeing in the segment, and how is it impacting your yields and margins?
No, I'm not seeing any competition in that sense because the requirement of funding for the renewable or for that matter in the power sector is a huge. The areas of emphasis in this and the shift therein is taking place. while the lending rates are coming down, but at the same time, we believe, and in our case as well, the borrowing cost is also coming down. So I do not see the competition in that sense, but I would believe a modern day financial institution have to be highly progressive and highly innovative to bringing out the new financing products to deal with the requirement of the power projects, particularly renewables in a changing context. I would certainly see in the budget some measures coming for the infrastructure finance companies, because these companies, a new set of NBFC was evolved to lay focus on infrastructure financing exclusively with the domain expertise. I would believe they would be given level playing field in terms of the income tax provisions, in terms of the benefits and the deductions available, and also in terms of access to the financing for the IFCs.
Okay, Mr. Haldia, fair enough. Thanks very much for taking time out, sharing your business outlook with us, as well as those budget expectations. Well, that's the management of PDC Financial Services, and talking about how they expect budget to have measures for solar power sector. We'll move on then and put the spotlight on CMEC, as they've just won an order, and that's essentially they've entered a contract for charter hire in Persian Gulf. Connect with the management then. Captain CJ Rodrigues, who's the MD of the company, is with